Hello and welcome to everyone joining us live for an evening with Inversant. I'm Charles Desmond, CEO of Inversant. I'm thrilled to have all of you here on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn for our Barriers Bash, a tribute to crushing barriers to higher education. Tonight is made possible by our generous sponsors, including special recognition to Metro Credit Union, KM Foods, and Northbridge for their continuous support throughout the year. The road to higher education for low-income to moderate students isn't an easy one, as most folks who are listening to us tonight know. From socioeconomic to systemic barriers, students face roadblocks at every step of the way. At Inversant, we're addressing the top barriers students face, and tonight we're joined by an illustrious panel of community leaders, team members, and Inversant families to share their experiences and their insights with us. We'll also share findings from our Cash for College initiative and what we learned from the thousands of students who applied across Massachusetts for support for their public education and private education experiences. What we found from talking with these students and examining what they had to say about their road to higher ed was that they faced many barriers for low-income and moderate-income students. One of the barriers was the high risk of dropping out. That is, students start, but they sometimes can't complete. Sometimes just being a non-traditional student is a barrier. Sometimes there's systemic and racial biases, conscious and unconscious, that get in the way. And there's, of course, economic barriers that often get in the way of success for students. And as everyone recognizes, COVID-19 presents many challenges that we have to face. So, before we dive in, let's get a few housekeeping items out of the way. So, this is an open and interactive conversation. This is all about you, everyone who's listening with us tonight. We're taking your questions, and we want to hear from you this evening. If you hear something today that you think has relevance to you, or do you know someone who could benefit from it, we want you to mention them in the comment section. And finally, we want you to miss our biggest virtual scavenger hunt tonight. Throughout tonight's evening, there's going to be some exciting, great, and wonderful opportunities for you to win up to $150 in prizes. So, to talk a little bit about that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Rudis, who's joining me tonight. And Rebecca, mind sharing a few things about what the scavenger hunt is all about?
You bet. And thank you, Charlie. It's so great to be here with everybody tonight. So as Charlie mentioned, this is a very open and interactive conversation. We're excited to get to hear from you tonight. We're going to be sharing all of your comments. So as Charlie mentioned, no matter where you're joining us from, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, we would love to share your comments. So as you drop those in, all of our team members from Inversant are here tonight, and we're going to make sure that if you've got feedback or questions, that we can address that as we go. And then, as Charlie mentioned, we've got a big scavenger hunt throughout the night. And how that is going to work is, like I said, no matter where you're joining us from, you get the chance to play. So there's going to be 4 different items that we're going to ask you to share. You can share those right within the comments of the post, no matter which of those social networks you're on. And what we're looking for are 4 different things. So the first one is a selfie with your pet, your favorite face mask, your high school or college diploma, and then the one thing that you couldn't live without during the pandemic. I was thinking about this today, Charlie, and I think it might be my dogs, and maybe my hubby would be first. I don't know. But anyway, you're going to have to scroll your phone, get into your photos, and make sure you've got those ready to go when we ask for those. And then how that's going to work You're going to share those in the comments. And then at the end, we're going to randomly draw 2 winners. So you have to be here in order to win either one of those gift cards. We're giving away 2 different gift cards, one for $50 and one for $100 from Amazon. But like I said, very important. You got to be here to win. So Charlie, with all of that said, I think we're ready to jump right in. I'm going to throw it back to you.
Oh, thank you very much. And take this scavenger hunt seriously, folks. I want you to get all of this stuff and get in the game because it's going to be a lot of fun. So we have 2 outstanding guests tonight. Let me first of all introduce Angela Irvin, is an alumna of the Inversant program, the proud mother of a college graduate and Inversant scholarship coordinator, Alex Irvin, and a new member of the Inversant board of directors. And so, Angela, great to see you. Secondly, let me introduce Ruth Mormon, is a long-standing member of the Inversant Board of Directors, the incoming vice chair of our board, and a trustee at Boston University. In addition to that, a great scholar and intellectual herself. So our first barrier this evening is about the high risk of dropping out. So just as background, low-income students are at higher risk of dropping out of school than their more affluent peers. Only 11% of low-income students earn their bachelor's degree within 6 years, while 58% of students from middle to high-income families complete their degrees within 6 years. Angela, why is addressing this disparity important to you as you think about this?
Well, I'm so excited to be here and be a part of this conversation, Charlie and Rebecca, and happy to be here with you as well, Ruth. This matter is so important to me because during a time where we are faced with COVID-19 and racism, we're talking about structural barriers. I think that when we think about high risk of dropout for college students, it not only starts at college, but we need to also look at the efforts that were put into place for students when they were in high school. So this isn't oftentimes a new experience for families, but it's just them overcoming a new system or a new structure. In addition to having a recent college graduate, Alex, who you mentioned, we also have a current college student, Andrew, who's in school, and he is working through some of the transitions that we have right now happening across the world. And for our family, it's important for us to remind him and to support him with regards to the stressors that are part of structures that are within the academic environment, the expectations, for us to also know that we have to give them independence. The other piece of that is how do we support our students? How do we encourage them and motivate them and coach them to remain where they are, even if that includes making changes? The biggest thing that I've always said is that it's one thing to be able to get a student to college. The next is to get them through college. And whatever it is that we have to do, we have to make sure that we do that because there are so many things that they're facing, including different insecurities. And some of those insecurities can be food, housing, things of that nature. Many families are facing high unemployment. Many of the families that are low income or middle income are essential workers. And so we think about the risks that are associated with being an essential worker. And so I think that it's the responsibility for our higher education institutions, as well as for those who have resources, to pour more into our these targeted groups of individuals, because it's not an educational gap, but it's more about an opportunity gap.
Thank you very much, Angela. That's a wonderful response. And you know the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a village to graduate a child too. So everyone, including parents, all have to be involved in the process. Ruth, what suggestions do you have for organizations like Inversant and for businesses and other policymakers who might be thinking about this whole question about retention and graduation and dropping out problems and issues?
Okay, I like to say that right now and going forward, this is a journey of discovery for all of us to help, address these problems and come together and work together. And I really think that we are a community of learners, and we need to be looking at this problem of retention. And I also think we really should be looking at this and acknowledging that our K through 12 system was set up, to be a filtering system and to be a sorting system. And then sometimes this continues on in college, and it really shouldn't. The kids have made it through high school. They get to college. They have done enough to prove that they can do the work. And now it needs the universities, the colleges need to embrace the students. And we as a community need to be supportive. And once the students arrive on campuses, it's time to embrace. It's time, to take and do a collective approach to help them fit in and find their place and provide, better advising, helping them connect to activities, connecting to other students, connecting to counseling resources, and really look at and providing a lot of mentoring and some, I guess I should say, it's that opportunity to do internships and connect their work to their academic work. And so and my view here too is we need to think big, but we need to begin with simple solutions first. There are things that we can all do. And the first thing we can do is embrace our students into a community and not let them lose the community that they've built, and then acknowledge them and really champion them and empower the students' voices. And I think we need to start approaching this problem from more of a positive point of view. And let's look at the kids who are succeeding and let's bring them more into that conversation. Why are they succeeding? What helped them succeed? I think our answers lie at that place. And we really do need to create equitable approaches. And we need to commit to sustainable system level changes. And I think we are seeing that today. Things are breaking down and changing. They're not doing SAT scores anymore. They're test optional. And we just need to keep moving along with those opportunities. So Charlie, I think, Inversant is the place to start. They start by supporting the families. They embrace the students and the families, and they take them on to college. And then we need to keep connected with those families as they enter the university. And we just keep building their communities for them. And I think, we're going to hear tonight more from some of the students who are all part of it, of Inversant. And I think, our last speaker, and we're going to hear from her son. She's very clear. This is an example of where we take from generation to generation and we really embrace the families.
Absolutely. And you definitely struck a nerve, Ruth, because you've got several comments. Yuming here says, yes, Ruth, our education should not be a filter system that prevents students to succeed. We should build better support and inclusions for all students. And Rochelle also said, I agree that it takes a village and we should all be thinking this way because contributing and supporting education for all is great for all of society. The more educated people are, the healthier they are, the more economically successful they are. So this is something all of society should get invested in for sure.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get over the top.
I think they did a better job in the comments of sorry than I did. So this is why it takes all of us.
That's right.
You did a fantastic job. And I think the critical point that you made is that when students arrive at the campus door, the same supports that they're getting to get to the door need to be provided to them once they get at the door. If we can do that in the same way, because it's a hard work getting them into the college experience, it's equally hard to get them through. And I think both of you, Angela and Ruth, laid that out as well as it possibly could have been. So remember, folks, if you want to learn more about this particular barrier and how to get involved with Inversant bashing this barrier, you can go to bit.ly/college barriers, and you can find additional information and support there. So, Rebecca, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right. Is it scavenger hunt time?
It is.
All right. So as we discussed, we've got our first scavenger hunt, and we're going to have 4 throughout the evening. This is our first one. And so share away. You're going to want to look into all of your photos. And this first one we want to see is a selfie with your pet. So, Charlie, I don't even know. Do you have pets? Do you have a pet?
Dogs running around the house right now. What are you talking about?
You do. All right. So we both have 2. Yes. So whatever you have, whether you have a cat, a dog, maybe you have fish, maybe you have a bunny rabbit. I had a friend talking about her daughter's bunny rabbit yesterday, whatever the case might be. All you have to do to enter the scavenger hunt and enter yourself to win at the end of this 90 minutes is just share that into the comments. So no matter what social network you're on, just go ahead and share your favorite selfie with your favorite pet. And our team is going to be looking out for those. We would love to see those pictures, and we'll certainly be sharing those throughout the evening as well. And so stay tuned, because we will have 3 more scavenger hunts throughout the night, all a little bit different, but all just a way for us to get to know you a little bit better. And also, as we discussed at the top of the hour, really important that you are sharing your thoughts, your feedback, and really getting involved in the conversation. As you just heard, it takes a village. It takes all of us. And so tonight is really all about hearing from you as we get the chance to speak with so many different community leaders, experts, our team here at Inversant, and then those families like Angela, we just got to hear from, that we get to work with, talk with, and hear from daily. So just a very interactive evening here tonight. And Charlie, I'm going to go ahead and toss it back to you now. And now let's just kind of touch up. So we're going through 5 barriers here tonight. And we just talked through our first one, which was the high risk of dropout. And now we're going to move into number 2, which is non-traditional students. And Charlie, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much. We have 2 outstanding people to talk with us about our second barrier, which is non-traditional students. Let me begin first with Yerlin Sauces, who's Inversant's Chelsea program manager. Her background includes executive leadership initiatives to build family and school partnerships and promoting community and civic engagement among families of linguistically and culturally diverse backgrounds. And also, Joel Gomez is a senior manager at Mass General Brigham and an adjunct professor of business communications at Boston University's Metropolitan College. He's also the current president of Prospenica Boston, the Association of Hispanic MBAs and Business Professionals. So barrier 2, which is the non-traditional students, deals with low-income students are more likely to be non-traditional students. They're 24 years of age and older. They're juggling work and family responsibilities while attending classes. Yerlin, you consider yourself a non-traditional student and you serve adult learners in your work at Inversant. What have you learned from your experiences and those of Inversant families that you'd like to share with our listening audience tonight?
Thank you, Charlie. Yes, indeed, I am considered a non-traditional student. So I graduated from college when I was 27 years old. And as a non-traditional student, I faced many barriers during my college years. And one was in support services. And I think the one that really struck me the most, it was the inter-role conflict. And what I mean by this is that I was, back then when I was in college, I was a full-time student. I was also a full-time employee. And at some point, I was a part-time intern. And aside of all of it, during the 4 years of me being a student, I had to drive around 70 miles every day for 4 years. So from home to work, from work to school, and then from school to home. So it wasn't easy. So, and also I remember a classmate that she used to bring her newborn baby to the classroom. She didn't have relatives living nearby her or anyone who could take care of baby. Another barrier that I found, and I still, even though almost 15 years after I graduated, it is social isolation. And what I mean by this is the lack of connection that I have with my classmates, not only because they were younger or I was older than them, but I was always in a rush trying to get to work, and I did not enjoy, let's say, a social outing with my classmates or sports or any events that were actually hosted by the university. So despite that, I still receive, and I will receive invitations from the college that I graduated from, invitations to reunite with former classmates. And since there's no connection with them, and I feel kind of like off track because of it. Now, also, I think the lack of academic flexibility was another issue. And what I mean by this, the schedule. So I found myself more often than not negotiating my class schedule, not only with my professors, but also with my employer. So I think I was lucky in that sense, because my employer was a little bit flexible. And even though when I started to work at 6 a.m. and my shift ended at 2 p.m., he would let me go some days, so I could finish my classes. So the challenge was for me to register core classes. Without core classes, you cannot graduate. So I had my core classes I took them mostly to the very end, like one semester before I graduated. So it was a very stressful situation. But at some point, I think the professors and my employer, they understood that, okay, I want to do this. And they were very supportive in that way. So that said, I believe that, the life experience stories and the cultural capital of non-traditional students like myself are valuable. And they are a great asset to any classroom. And that should be recognized. Back then it wasn't, but that's my hope.
Excellent observations. And I think when I listen to what you're saying, it's being a non-traditional student doesn't mean that you don't have the talent and expertise to take advantage of what higher education has to offer. But you can't have a rigid structure that gets in the way of the life that is sometimes more complicated for a non-traditional student. So thank you very much for your observations. So let me turn to Joel. You're an adult college student with a family and a full-time job. Managing school and work and family responsibilities was beyond challenge, I'm sure, but you somehow or another were able to succeed. What advice have you for your peers facing these obstacles, and what resources do you have to offer to students facing, in many respects, the challenges that you faced yourself trying to get through higher ed?
Well, thank you so much, Charles. First, let me just thank you and Inversant for the opportunity to be a part of such an important event. I have to say that for me, the number one thing that always gets asked is what is the most challenging thing that you had to face during your adult learning career? And for me, it had to be time management. And that's the number one thing that people always ask. How do you manage your time? How do you juggle between family, a full-time job, volunteering for Prospanica, or any other organizations that I volunteer? I simply have to make sure that I make a commitment to that specific event or to that specific organization, and also say no to some of the things that I really enjoy doing sometimes, such as watching a baseball game or watching a football game. And it's tough because you basically have to tell yourself I cannot watch this game for 2 hours. I have to write this paper instead, or I have to do some research for this specific paper or assignment. The other thing is telling friends and family members that you're not going to be around during that transition or during that time. So for me, I started. I came to the United States when I was 14 years old. I did not speak English, and I had struggled as a first-generation college student during my first year of college, and I dropped out. Continued to work, and was fortunate to come up with a supervisory position. And about 8 years ago, I decided to go back to school. What I did was some research ahead of time to make sure that I was ahead of the game and not waiting until the last minute to start doing some research. And I make sure that I also found a network. So I reached out to people who have been through the journey, ask questions. What are some of the things that you have done or faced that were challenging to you? Is it, how many courses should I be taking? Online was a new thing for me because when I dropped out of college, 20 years prior, there was no online courses. That was not an option. So I decided to take an online class as well as an on-campus class, and that worked out pretty well. I went to Northern Essex Community College for my first 2 years. I transferred to Boston University Metropolitan College, and then transferred to Bentley University, which was a whole new ball game at that level. For me, I had to be more committed, even more committed to that transition, because at that level, there is the expectation is even higher. However, I was able to get it done. A lot of family support. My two kids, Sarah and Abigail, they're 16 and 13 now. But when I started my college education, there were 8 and 5. So that tells you the number of years that they have to sacrifice, a lot of outings that I wasn't able to be a part of, a lot of activities that we were not able to enjoy. However, I did make a commitment to take advantage of the time off. So whenever there was a 2-week period that we, or a few weeks that we did not have classes, I made sure that I invested that time with the family. Also celebrating the success and making sure that you are, whenever you finish a few courses or a semester, make sure you celebrate that, because it's tough, it's a long journey, and it's not easy. So you have to also take the time to celebrate and make sure that that you are in the right path and taking the rest as well.
Excellent observations, both you and Yerlin, Joel. And I have to say that my own personal experience, that time management was the biggest obstacle that I faced as well. And the more pressure that I felt about academics, the harder it came for me to manage my time, because I would sometimes try to escape the pressure of academics by doing something else that made the academics more difficult, because I wasn't dedicating the time. One thing,
and that hits it right on the head. One thing I would add is, your work, if you're working full time, make sure that you talk to your boss and that they are understanding. For the most part, in my experience, I had a tremendous boss who was very supportive. And had it not been because of that, I probably would have struggled a lot more. But there are going to be times where you're going to have deadlines from work. You're going to have a deadline from school, and things are going crazy at home. And I think that's where you feel like, okay, what do I do? And just take it one thing at a time, prioritize what's more important. And there were times where I had to ask my boss, can I take today off? I cannot, it's just one of me. I cannot do all of these things. And she was very supportive, like I stated, and that worked out well.
Well, thank you very much. I think that those are excellent observations. And just being, quote unquote, a non-traditional student means you need to think differently about what your own personal challenges are and what the institution can do. And I love your suggestion, which is to say, don't be afraid to go in and ask for help, make your case known to your faculty members, and see whether or not they can help you along the path. So thank you very much. So let me say again to folks, if you'd like to learn more about this particular barrier, you can get involved with Inversant in bashing this barrier by going to bit.ly/college barriers, where information and resources are available to you. So, Rebecca, I'm going to turn it back to you so that you can talk a little bit more about what's going on with the scavenger hunt.
Absolutely. All right. So our first scavenger hunt is done. It's in the books. We shared our favorite selfie with our pet. And this one is going to be your favorite face mask. So by now, at this stage of the game, I bet you probably have your favorite face mask. I don't know about you, Charlie, but I got this as a gift. What do you think?
Oh, I like that.
It's pretty darn cute, huh? Talk about dogs. It was a gift from my dogs, my 2 Chihuahuas. But I probably have masks in every single room at the house because I somehow continue to lose them and cannot find all of them. I don't know how it happens when we have to have them every single time we leave the house, but we want to see your pictures. So share with us your favorite face mask, one that you have acquired over these last many months, and drop it into the comments. So no matter where you're watching us from, maybe it's Facebook, maybe it's LinkedIn, maybe it's Twitter, any one of those, all you have to do is upload that picture right from your camera roll into the comments. And our team here at Inversant is going to be paying attention. And then we're going to randomly draw from all of you that share your pictures with us. And we are going to be giving away 2 different gift cards at the end of tonight's event. So you do have to stick around. You have to be here for that. But we're giving 2 different gift cards. One is for $50. One's for $100 Amazon gift cards. And if you're anything like me, you have really leaned heavily on Amazon these last several months as well. So I think we can all definitely use a little bit more of those gift cards in our lives. So, Charlie, with that, let's get back to our barriers. And so let's just recap real quick here. We first talked about that first barrier faced by low to moderate income students was risk of dropout. So those starts versus those completions. Number 2 was non-traditional students, which we just finished up. And now we're going to get into systemic and racial bias. So I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much. And I'm joined now in this conversation about systemic and racial biases by 2 outstanding guests. First, let me introduce Rochelle Aranese, who's Inversant's Director of Programs. She first joined Inversant in 2013 as the Spanish facilitator, and now is responsible for the effective delivery and overall success of all of our services. Secondly, an absolutely outstanding person, Cecilia Soriano, is the Director of Development at the Margarita Muniz Academy, Boston Public Schools' first dual language high school. The Academy prepares leaders who are fluent in English and Spanish, ready for career and college, and ready to contribute to the community and beyond. The barrier that we're looking at, that they will be responding to, is systemic and racial biases. Opportunity gaps for students of color start early. Systemic inequality follows these students at every step of their college journey. Too often we hear that zip code is destiny. Rochelle, for students of color who want to pursue higher education, what challenges are they likely to meet along the way?
Of course, I've been doing this so much while working from home that, of course, I had to forget to unmute myself. That's some of the challenges with technology these days. But thank you, Charlie, so much for having me and for asking me that question. And I think specifically for this question, a lot of the barriers that we have been discussing today are pretty much centered in some of the racial inequalities within our educational system. And we can pretty much put race in every single thing that we've discussed about today, because unfortunately, student of colors, for example, students of color are also, at higher risk of dropping out, are also most likely tend to be non-traditional students as well. So in this whole sphere, when we're talking about students of color, specifically African-American and Latino students, unfortunately, they are less likely to graduate from high school and even less likely to attend and graduate from college, as we've been discussing. And a lot of the times, many see this issue as more of an economic inequality issue, more so than race. But in my opinion, you can't really talk about one without the other, because they do go hand in hand, especially when you're looking at the educational system in our country. And because of that hand in hand, students of color are usually more likely to be born in poverty, just like you mentioned, in terms of like the zip code sometimes determines how well you're going to do in society. They're more likely to also attend poor schools that sometimes are unable to provide them with the academic, social, and economic resources and tools that they need to catch up to their white counterparts. And it's not necessarily that it's because of the fault of the school system. It's because some of the school system in these zip codes are not provided also with the resources that they need. You know, they're great teachers or great students, but a lot of the times even the financial piece of how much money they get to be able to provide more resources to their kids is just not there. So they end up falling short. And then same thing if students of colors do make it to college, which many do, they're less likely to attend some of the more prestigious, more well-off universities and college that provide with a lot more support to help them out throughout the process. A lot of times students of color also end up in remedial classes, which means that they're going to have to spend more time and more money going to school without the guarantee that there's going to be a degree at the end of all that work. And a lot of these students also end up working part-time and full-time. In my case, I actually worked between part-time and full-time all throughout my 4 years in college when I was getting my bachelor's degree as a student of color. And a lot of that had to do because of the fact that I had to pay for my own books, to help my parents. I didn't want them to have to dish out $1,000 each semester, because at the time I was a bio student. So, biology and chemistry books are very expensive. And to help them out, I decided, okay, I'm going to work 20 hours, 30 hours, sometimes 40 hours a week, while at the same time being a full-time student. So that's tough for a lot of students of color. And then a lot of them, in the long run also end up chipping in to help back home. So this is something that is less likely to happen to white students overall. Not that it doesn't happen, but it's less likely to, which is why we have to see that there is that dichotomy of race and economic inequalities that work together to kind of like provide this barrier for students. And at the end of the day, these are some of the things that actually stop someone from going all the way, or do not allow them to finish within 4, 5, 6 years, and take a lot more time and a lot more money to be able to finish. So unfortunately, that is the tough reality that we are dealing with right now when it comes to the racial inequality in our educational system.
Well, I think your observations are absolutely right on the mark. I think that there's a generalization that when you enter at the college door, all things are equal. And I think what you're saying is that many students, in order to get to that door, are carrying a lot of baggage and a lot of issues with them. And if we don't recognize that and design the system so that can better address those concerns, we then deal with the two previous barriers that we talked about before, such as dropping out and those other challenges. So I think your points are absolutely well taken. And I'm glad that you're at Inversant, sharing information with younger people that we have who certainly can benefit from it. So now I'm so happy to talk about our good friend Cecilia at Margarita Muniz. Cecilia, you're an administrator at Margarita Muniz Academy, where 99% of the student body are children of color. Why is addressing educational opportunity gaps related to systemic and racial inequities important to you?
I am not Cecilia, and she is not here, unfortunately. So why don't we... What's that?
Is Ming sitting in for her?
No, she's actually coming up next. I was going to pull her on, but we can pull Rochelle right back in and just continue our conversation with Rochelle.
That would be great.
Yeah, that's just how it goes on live video, right? Sometimes it happens.
Sometimes it happens. Yeah. Well, I think for me, it's again, in what I mentioned earlier, just to go a little bit more when it comes to just school systems. I think and we talked a little bit about, it takes a village to be able to provide support to all of our students. And like Charlie mentioned, recognize that there is a lot of baggage, and a lot of that baggage comes in responsibilities that sometimes people cannot even imagine 18-year-olds having day to day. And that does happen a lot when you are a student of color that comes in from, a zip code that doesn't have a lot of resources. For example, the school, Margarita Muniz, is a really, really great school, and a school that I know. There's also a lot of really amazing schools that are trying the best that they can to help their students succeed. In the Boston area, I was actually a Boston Public School graduate, so I saw a lot of teachers and guidance counselors trying their best. One guidance counselor for about 500, 600, 700 students at the same time. So of course, a lot of the times the students that had the best grades are going to be the ones that stand out. Because a lot of the other students, again, within the high school level, also had to work and had to worry about their families. So they're less likely to advocate for themselves. So I think in that sense, when we're looking at our schools and the fact that a lot of the administrators and our teachers don't have the bandwidth to pinpoint those students that actually do need more support and more attention, a lot of it has to do because of the lack of resources that they receive from our government, from just our communities in general, because they're, in more overpopulated places. So I think it is important to really take a look at that, and the fact that it does, and I think Angela also mentioned it earlier, it does come way earlier than when you are stepping into a college classroom. At that point, there's already so many barriers and so much baggage that the student has that sometimes it's not even enough to actually make it into a college classroom to give you enough support to continue. Not that I'm saying that it's not possible. I was actually, Boston Public School student. I saw a lot of these barriers. I had to work myself. I came from schools that didn't have a lot of resources, but I did have a lot of teachers and administrators that really believed in me. And I was able to make it and be here at Inversant to share. But not a lot of those students that I met throughout my time in an overpopulated school were able to make it to this day. So that's definitely something that we need to also help our schools, provide more support to them to make it happen for everybody, not just the students that stand out because of the fact that they're doing better than others, for sure.
Well, I think that the point is so well taken, particularly when you think about Margarita Muniz, which is a dual language school, because an unconscious bias is, well, you speak another language, and in America, you're only supposed to speak English. But the fact of the matter, it's an asset if you speak two languages and you're versed in two languages and you can communicate people in an international context. So I'm certainly thankful for this conversation about systemic and racial biases. Some are conscious and some unconscious biases that play out in the environments that we find students in. And I'd like to say for those who are listening, if you'd like to learn more about this particular dimension of our work around systemic and racial biases, you can also go to bit.ly/college barriers. And there's a wealth of information and websites that are available that can give you more information at that time. So let me turn my attention now back to my fearless leader over here, Rebecca, and tell us how the scavenger hunt is going. High school or college diplomas, I think you're going to ask people to dig up now. I wouldn't be able to find mine.
Yes. Before we do that, I just wanted to share a great comment as we're getting so many comments. So thank you to everybody that is joining us here live. So Charlie, bear hug. awesome name. Working full-time while attending college, either full or part-time, is very challenging. Both environments are demanding, and systemic barriers challenges the success of both. Thanks for sharing your experience, Rochelle. I really relate. So good stuff. It's just... it seems that we have definitely struck a chord, I would say, here tonight, Charlie, with everybody sharing their experiences, sharing just their background and their insight. And Rochelle, thank you for taking on two different people tonight. It's fabulous that she can just step in and talk about anything. So thank goodness.
She's amazing. And I'm sad that Cecilia couldn't be with us tonight. I'm sure it was some unexpected.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But because she has such wonderful insights about Margarita Ruiz institution.
Yes, we'll definitely get her back next time for sure. And like you said, all right, time for our next scavenger hunt. So to all of you that are playing, no matter which social network, all you have to do is upload a photo. And this one is high school or college diploma. So you got to find a picture of either that high school or college diploma and share it with us. And when you do, you get entered to win into our scavenger hunt and our drawing at the end, where we're giving away two different Amazon gift cards. One's for $50, one's for $100, and it's just for playing. That's all it takes. All it takes is to let us know that you're here and that you have found. I think I'd be hard pressed to find my high school diploma. I don't know about you, Charlie, but that's moved a lot of times. So I think I'd have a hard time tracking that one down. But some that are closer to when they actually graduated from high school might have a much easier time.
I think that's probably true. I have no idea where my high school diploma is. I'm sure, unfortunately, my mom has passed away. She would have known where it was in an instant, but I don't. So
yeah,
for those of you who are listening, get involved in the scavenger hunt and get yourself involved because it's a lot of fun. And also, don't hesitate to ask us questions or make comments. You don't have to ask a question. If you want to just say something about what you heard, if it resonates with you, share it with us because I think our larger listening audience would enjoy hearing your perspectives.
Absolutely. And Mia says, yes, it would be a tall order to dig up my diploma, hashtag long in the tooth, class of 83. So yeah, right there with, it would be a little difficult.
Yes.
All right. So let's get back to it. Let's just take a look at the barriers that we've talked about so far this evening. So our focus is the 5 common barriers faced by low to moderate income students. And so far we've talked about the high risk of dropout, non-traditional students, systemic and racial bias. And now we're going to move into number 4, which is economic bias. And Charlie, I'll let you take it.
Thank you very much. We have two, again, I'm so happy with the richness of the people that we've invited to share some thoughts with us tonight. Our first speaker is going to be Yiming Shuang, who is Inversant's Chief Operating Officer and has been deeply involved in our program from the beginning. As an immigrant and first-generation graduate of a U.S. university, Yiming understands what many Inversant families experience while navigating U.S. higher education. Our second guest is going to be, Christine Jauregui, who is our Director of Marketing and Communications for Inversant. Again, an extremely talented woman, and I'm not even doing justice to all the wonderful things that she does and the deep experience that she's had. But the fact that she's working with us in Inversant is absolutely critical, and she's bringing her intelligence and her insights to help us with the work that we're doing as we go forward. Barrier 4 is economic bias. The high cost of education produces dramatically different learning opportunities for students based on their family incomes. We know from myriad research studies that parents' educational attainment is highly correlated with their children's educational attainment. Yiming, how does coming from a low-income family or being a first one in one's family to pursue higher education put extra challenges in one's path?
Oh, thank you so much for introducing me. I'm so glad to be here tonight with everyone. And I started working at Inversant right after I graduated from college. And yes, as the first person in my own immediate family to graduate from Boston University, a U.S. College for grad school, I experienced that a lot, even during grad school, that even I was an international student, and international students don't get any financial aid. So my family have to be very careful and calculating and predicting a lot of costs and a lot of things that was really outside of our budget and we didn't even imagine. So I had a whole year. I did not eat in the school cafeteria and just packing my own lunch, like British muffin, like sandwich every day for my lunch during grad school. And I saw a lot of my American classmates, and they were all on financial aid, and then they're having a really hard time, like using a student loan, but then covering the living expenses. So when I first started working at Inversant, I thought that was a perfect solution because we were a college savings program, and that's always like focusing like the future-oriented planning. I do a lot of financial planning and helping a lot of the first generation to college families who didn't experience college themselves, like me when I was in grad school, and then start doing the different budget items. But we found two major barriers. First is that it's extremely difficult, like even going to the college websites and doing all the research, like a lot of families still found a lot of hidden or surprise costs when they're actually in college that they didn't know, oh, there's a additional fee in order to register for this course that's required to graduate school. Or for example, like kids, like when they had to have an emergency and went to the emergency room, and that's additional healthcare costs that probably they didn't have it safe enough on top of all the direct costs of college. So that's the first barrier. And the second barrier is that exactly because they couldn't predict the total cost of college. So then it's harder for them when they're making that decision and mapping out the financial aid package, not knowing that whether they're borrowing enough or borrowing too much. So there's some unnecessary borrowing. Maybe they didn't need to use all that money, but then that was covered in their financial aid package that they accept the full amount. Or it could be that they realize the full Pell grants or the need-based grants wasn't enough to help them cover the expenses outside of tuition and fee, but those are as important for them to continue through their college path. And that's part of the reason why, as we started as a college savings organization, we really want to make sure we're also designing the solution and educational support to help, like with our curriculum, really talking about how to make the planning of understanding these costs and financial aid structure, but at the same time, doing any backup plan, like thinking about different alternatives, like creating that options. So then giving people more financial freedom and knowledge when making their choices. And then lastly, that's really what brought us here tonight. It's this Cash for College fund that we're creating. And then we're learning so much from all the applicants about sharing their own experiences and helping us understand how many unmet needs and hidden costs that could be. And it will better inform us in designing our future program services and the scholarships.
Well, as I always say, Yuming, you are so lucid about your understanding of these issues and giving parents and students good quality information about the points that you're raising, that it is possible to overcome these barriers, but you need information, you need guidance, and you need support in order for that to happen. And with that, it is possible to transcend your way through higher education and get on with the business of getting your degree. And withstanding the pressures of the financial barriers that sometimes get in the way. So let me just ask a question of Christine. Is it the case that Cecilia has arrived and that she's willing to join in?
Yes.
You are, because she can deal with both of these questions that we've attended, which is
certainly can. If
I'll
we
let you
can,
introduce her. You can bring her in.
I would love to have her speak instead of me, because she is the big star and I'm just the background understudy. But yes, let's bring Cecilia in. Thank you for joining us, and I'll back out.
Hi,
Thank you so much, Christine. Hi, Charles. So nice to see you. Extremely nice to see you.
Always.
And I'm happy to be here. Inversant is such a wonderful organization and tackling so many of the problems that our present day high school students going into college, wanting to go into college, are facing. So is there a particular question you want me to address?
Yeah, well, what we've been talking about are what are some of the economic barriers that students that you work with at Margarita Muniz face, and how do these biases that simply relate to the fact that they're non-traditional students in the respect that they're not native-born English-speaking students, how does that sometimes, how do students overcome, how does the college equip them with the tools and the resources and confidence to be able to overcome those barriers and be successful in higher ed?
There's no question that going to college and going through that system and being successful will prepare them for what they're going into. What we face is how to get into college, how to pay for college, how to overcome a lot of the intrinsic barriers that are there. Our students, as you said, Charles, I represent the Margarita Muniz Academy, which is the only dual language, college prep, career focused, arts infused high school, public high school in the whole New England area. We have 94% of our students are from Hispanic backgrounds, are Latinos, and many of them are immigrants. If not this year, last year, 2 years before that, all of them for sure are the first ones to graduate from high school, and therefore, of course, the first ones to go into college. And so they have the difficulties of language when so much of the curriculum is not in English, when so much of the curriculum isn't culturally relevant or sensitive to any of the backgrounds that they have. We are and have been in the United States primarily an individualized focused society, whereas in the Latin culture, it's a team, it's a group, it's a family-oriented society. And so to work together to help the family, to take priorities that face the family as a whole is part of the way that the thinking goes, as opposed to what do I need? How am I going to get ahead? And so that's some of the overall challenges. But as they come in, first to overcome the language, to understand the culture, to go into a school that was a system that was devised primarily for a more homogeneous population, much more homogeneous than what we have now. We have people from all over the world, and in our school from all over the Latin world. And so there's biases against the way people learn, the speed with which they learn, how they acknowledge or how they face challenges. And our population, because it is new to the country, it faces all kinds of hardships. Housing, food, clothing, learning the culture. It's just incredible. And so then, as you ask them to go through the very challenging process of preparing to go to college, I mean, it's been hard enough to get through high school, and now they have to prepare to go to college. The paperwork that's involved in terms of preparing the financial forms, the timing of it, the fact that it's not only their financials, it's their parents' financials. So it's the family as a whole that has to deal with it. When they're facing with very pressing day-to-day issues, college you have to plan for. It's 6 months, it's a year, it's 5 years, where a family that has had such difficult times coming to this country may be planning this month, next month. They're just thinking, how do I do it today, this week, next month? So it's a whole shift that needs to take place in the thinking. Also, then you get to how they need to prepare to pass the tests to go to college, the entrance exams, how their grading is considered. Some of the countries don't have the same grading that we have. And to be able to fit into that mold where you're under that pressure to take those exams, all of those are very well known from people that have lived in this culture. But it's not true for people that come from other cultures. And so even as things as simple as what zip code you live in, the zip code you live in often dictates what school you go to. And if you're in a poor zip code, you go to a school that doesn't have the kind of funding that is needed to provide an equitable education for students that are very high needs. So a school that is underfunded doesn't usually have a full-time nurse, doesn't have a full-time counselor, sometimes not a counselor at all. They may have special ed help. And so to be able to understand the individual learning style of each child, to be able to place them accordingly. I mean, those are all things that they haven't had benefit of. And yet they're expected, once they move along the path, to be able to compete with students that have come from more privileged backgrounds, whose parents have gone to college, where they know all the ropes, they've been prepared for them. And then once they get to college, as Yiming said before, they find themselves totally isolated, which only adds to their feeling of inadequacy and difficulty in meeting the requirements of college. So the work that Inversant is doing in terms of trying to prepare and educate families that are coming from different countries and acquainting them with the entire process of going into college and what they need to do, how they need to think about it, how they need to prepare for it, so that in keeping with the Latino culture, that the entire family is there working with the child, working with the student to help them achieve what they all want, which for them to be able to be successful in this country. And of course, by having gone to college and hopefully even graduate school.
Cecilia, you are just so brilliant. I don't think that there's anyone who could have done a better job of explaining what Margarita Muniz is all about, what the challenges that they're facing and what you're trying to do, and where the supports in thinking need to take place. I mean, the generalizations for what you're experiencing in Margarita Muniz could be shared with every public school in the city of Boston, because you're an incubator for outstanding innovations and support structures that our whole system needs to adopt to be more successful for the students we serve. So thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and your intellect with us. This was so valuable for us to hear. And Yiming as well, thank you as well for your very, very deep insights about the work that we're trying to do in our organization. And let me say to our listening audience as well, if you want to learn more about this particular barrier, the economic barriers, as it overlays and interfaces and intersects with the systemic and racial biases, don't hesitate to go to our website, which is the bit.ly/college barriers, where there's a deep resource of materials and connections and linkages that will bring you into a deeper conversation about these things. And if you have thoughts to share with us, comments, send us emails, get in touch with us and let us know so that we can broaden this conversation and that we can all engage more deeply in the work that we're all so committed to doing. So I'm going to turn now again to my colleague, because the scavenger hunt, which I can't participate in because I'm one of the hosts, but I would like to participate. But even if I could, I don't have any of the things you're looking for. So let me turn it back to you, Rebecca, and we'll get an update on how things are going. Are you muted? Rebecca, I think you're muted.
Well, of course I am. I'm just here talking away. Of course I'm muted. So, Charlie, what I was saying while I was muted is that we're having some technical issues, unfortunately, and people have not been able to upload their pictures for the scavenger hunt. Yeah. So unfortunately, we're going to have to switch it up a little bit where we were asking them to upload pictures as they came across these items. And instead, we're just going to have everybody either tag us. So you can tag us in a post on Facebook or over on LinkedIn or tweet us at Inversant and make sure you share that picture. And so we have had 4 different, and I'm just going to run back through each one of these real quick here. So the first one was a selfie with your favorite pet. The second one was, let's see, your favorite face mask. And then it was your high school or college diploma. And this one is the one thing that you cannot live without during the pandemic. Charlie, what would your one thing be? Can you think about it?
Let's see. The one thing that I can't live without during the pandemic, I'd have to say it's my computer, because I spend a lot of time reading my books or communicating with my colleagues and friends. And I've got a new granddaughter who's only just turned 2 this month, so I get to see her. So it's my computer, I would say, to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think that has been a lifeline for all of us, hasn't it? As everything we do is exactly what we're doing here tonight and being able to get face to face. So thank you again to everybody that's been here. We're sorry that you just haven't had the ability to enter our scavenger hunt, but we are still going to give you the opportunity. So like I said, you can post, you can tag us, or you can email us hi@inversant.org and just let us know that this is a part of the scavenger hunt. And what will happen is, rather than us being able to give those gift cards away tonight, we're going to give you an extra week. So you've got through next Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern time to get those over to us if you want to email, if you want to tag us, and then we will pick a winner randomly out of that and notify you that you are the winner of one of 2 $50 or $100 Amazon gift cards. So, like we said, you just got to roll with the punches, right, Charlie, when it's live.
This is the truth. And that really kind of leads us into the last topic that we're going to be talking about tonight, because whoever in the world could have imagined that we're dealing with the COVID-19 crisis that we're dealing with. More than 11 million Americans infected, more than 250,000 deaths, in the impact and devastation of this virus is still taking its toll on the country. So we're now going to turn to 2 guests who are going to shed some insights on this, hopefully, and that will give us some perspectives and a lens through which we can look at this other than the ones that we have ourselves. Let me first talk and introduce Paul Martin as the president of First Generation Harvard Alumni and First Generation Alumni of MIT. After earning degrees at Harvard and MIT, he launched College Money Method. Paul is now earning his certified financial planner credentials with a focus on educational financing. As a member of the National College Advocacy Group, he advocates for first-generation students, financial well-being, and educational accessibility and affordability. Alex Irvin is an Inversant Scholarship Coordinator and an alumnus of Inversant programming. His mother earlier was on the program, who's equally as gifted as he is. A recent graduate of Northeastern University, my institutional ties. Alex provides Inversant families with personal insights into the college experience. So our barrier that we're referring to now is COVID-19. The disparities already plaguing lower income families have intensified. The pandemic has strengthened the educational aspirations of an entire generation of students. Paul, what effects of the pandemic have you observed hitting low-income and first-generation students especially hard as you see it? And you're muted at this time.
Appreciate that as well. Thank you so much for having me join. And I'm so proud to be associated with this group, as you guys are doing amazing work. Just some background. So I am president of the two alumni associations at Harvard and MIT that are focused on, we're all alumni that are first in our family to go to college. I went to a very large public school in the Miami area and found my way to be able to get to Harvard. And coming out and being an alumni now, our alumni group is really focused on advocacy and support of first-gen students coming into the college system, whether it's at Harvard or MIT. And in that process, we have a really strong relationship with students on campus, as you would imagine. And what we heard on March 14th, when the president of Harvard sent a blanket email to all students saying to move out in just 5 or 6 short days, was immediately from first-gen low-income students who said, where do we go? You know, there was a real panic amongst students because of the fact that university oftentimes for first-gen students who are able to attend is an equalizer for them, right? It provides housing if they're on campus, it provides food, it provides the facilities which allow for somewhat of an equal learning environment. And knowing that students had to move off campus, it was really scary for a lot of students because of the fact that they knew that they were going back to homes where potentially there wasn't the same facilities. Oftentimes there weren't. And so we partnered with the student body to do a quick fundraiser to develop micro grants for students to be able to access, to really bridge that financial gap. Because, you know, as previous speakers were talking about, is that college, you know, thinks of the affordability problem around this, sometimes around tuition and books and these kind of things. But the reality is, for most first-gen and low-income students, there are other financial barriers that exist for them. And we see them on the day-to-day, right? When a college student who's first-gen or low-income can't do that unpaid internship because they have to earn money that summer in order to afford and give back to their family. So what really happened with COVID-19 is we really saw an exposure of the inequities that underlie oftentimes students' lives that are masked when they're in college, because they have, at Harvard, thankfully, they do have full rides to get, food, housing, et cetera. But once they moved off campus or were pushed off campus, there was the reality of, well, how do I set up? How can I be successful? And what we did see on statistics and then this certainly, this is one of the prestigious universities. This is certainly just one university story. And you multiply that by every university campus this past couple semesters, and you could see the ripple effect in terms of what that means. Because even at Harvard, we had students where when we had the fund, we saw that 80% of students who applied for grants from us had families experiencing job loss, right, due to the pandemic. We saw 45% of our students as food insecure, because they were relying on the cafeteria and being able to get food on campus in order to afford to eat day to day. We had 27% in housing insecurity. So the reality is that, when we think about, college experience, there are different dimensions. And we often know that because of COVID, students now studying from home don't have the same facilities. We had students who were driving to the parking lots of Burger King to access free Wi-Fi because they didn't have adequate Wi-Fi at home. And then you have the diversity of first-gen students, some coming from rural areas, urban areas, et cetera, that really exacerbate the needs or the complexity of needs around COVID. So this really kind of a snapshot, but certainly, unfortunately, not an isolated case where you have students that are now back home and having to study from home and doing the best they can. But the reality is they don't have access and the same access to resources that they once did on campus. And so it really opens up the question for universities of where does their responsibility begin and end when it comes to the whole wellness of students, especially first-gen and low-income students?
Let me say, Paul, look, I'm sure everyone who's listening is applauding right now for the heroic work that you're doing. First of all, by giving voice to this issue as a concern. Sometimes we think about these elite institutions and we think everything is wonderful, but students are still struggling, trying to make their way. But fortunately, for many of them and for the institutions themselves, you're there making them aware and sharing, speaking truth to power, as we say, about what needs to be done to make these schools really accessible and available to all the students that we're serving. I'm sure that you're going to get a lot of questions and comments, and Rebecca will be listening. So before we sign off, I want you to be able to respond to
absolutely
things that may be said. Alex, you're in regular contact with current college students. You've been involved in the research that led to this forum that we're having tonight. What can you share with us about the implications and the impact of COVID-19 on low-income students across New England and in many respects across the country?
Let me unmute myself first. Thank you for having me, Charlie.
Of course.
So Paul actually hit on a lot of the struggles that students have been communicating that they've been facing. So those resources and those facilities, as he mentioned, a lot of students actually mentioned that they miss going to the library. The library might have provided them with free technology of some sort. So that could be from computer rentals to just printing out documents that they need for classes. So a lot of students share that without that resource, that school has been so much more complicated for them and a lot harder for them. Another thing that Paul mentioned was internet connection. So a lot of students that I speak with talk about changes in prices of their internet service, their providers, because they may need more bandwidth at home. And some students can't afford that. So I've talked to a couple of students who say they go to their next door neighbors and ask if they could use their Wi-Fi, and they just try to find other ways. Or, if coffee shops are still, they're now open. They show up to those and use their free Wi-Fi. And another piece that a lot of students mention that we don't necessarily think about is in-person interaction. So from speaking with a lot of students, they mention how they've had their support groups on campus of students who are like them and just have that, they share similar experiences and similar struggles, and just having the support of each other there is something that they miss having. And I've also been speaking with students and they talk about their advisors. So without in-person communication with their advisors, a lot of students have told me that they struggle with selecting classes, and not just selecting their classes, but creating their schedules, because a lot of these students have to work and they need to build their classes around their work schedule, which is another piece that students have mentioned that they're missing by not being on campus, is jobs that are on campus. So a lot of students have work study and they work on campus in some capacity. Could be at the library, could be in a dining hall, could be anywhere. But without those being open, they've lost a source of income, which has created additional struggle for them on top of things that they're already experiencing. So those are some of the things that I've been seeing and I've been hearing while speaking with students and speaking with families. And I hope that we can find a way to help these students and get them back on track and on the road to success.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. I think that generally speaking, that people may not be aware of the fact that these barriers are present. The general perception is that once you make it to college, you've got it made and everything's going to be wonderful. But the fact of the matter is that there's still continuing to be continuing challenges that have to be addressed. And certainly your work with students and assessing and evaluating the issues that they're concerned about and trying to design strategies to address them is extremely important and quite valuable. So thank you to you and to Paul as well. This has been a wonderful last barrier that we've discussed tonight, in the sense that we're trying to shed light on how these barriers are getting in the way of opportunity that exists for talented students who otherwise could soar and grow and reach their full potential if these barriers were not in front of them. And I think what we're trying to say with Inversant and what we're trying to accomplish with the conversation we're having tonight is if you don't understand these barriers, you can't do anything about them. So that's why we're giving voice to them and bringing on you all who are at ground level looking at these issues and helping you share these issues with us. And so thank you both. Is there any further observations and comments you'd like to share with us before we kind of wrap things up tonight? So there being none, let me just say to everyone who's listening out, we have people here in Massachusetts, in New England, and across the country who are routinely listening to our conversations. We try to shed light on these issues because we think students from all walks of life, from all economic and social economic backgrounds are trying to figure out a way and find a way to get the skills and the resources they need to be successful, have successful families, have strong communities. But that can't happen if our educational system isn't working for everyone and equitably. So that's partly why we're doing what it is that we're doing tonight. So let me just say, as we wrap up, these 5 barriers that we've discussed, the high risk of dropping out, many students start and can't complete. What does it mean to be a non-traditional student? And what are the parameters of that variable? And why do we need to understand it if you're a faculty member, an academic leader, or administrator on campus? What are the conscious and unconscious racial biases that intersect in our lives on a day-to-day basis? And how do we recognize them? And how do we see how we, in our roles every single day, contribute to enforce them, or are actors who are trying to dismantle these systemic and racial barriers that get in the way? And finally, the COVID-19 crisis. It's a tragedy what's happening in the United States. It's obviously a tragedy around the world. And many, many, many people are suffering. But let's acknowledge the fact that it's taking a high impact, a much higher impact, if you happen to be low income or a minority or from a new immigrant family or background. Those impacts are much more profound. So you can learn more about these variables by visiting our website that's on the screen right now. If you have things to share with us, insights that you think could be valuable to our conversations and that could help inform us and help equip us to better prepare ourselves for the work that we're presently doing at Inversant and our related programs, please don't be bashful. Join with us. We are a partner-based organization. We like to work collaboratively with others to get this work done. Let me also say before I close, I want to just simply bring up one more time to thank our Metro Credit Union and the wonderful people at Metro Credit, KM Foods. Thank you very much for your help and your support. We couldn't do this without you. Northbridge for your involvement and your support. Their names are on our page right now that you can see. These are leaders and companies that are at the forefront of social change. They're doing the things that they do as businesses and the things that you have to be concerned about in that respect. But at the same time, they realize that social change and social involvement is critical and important. So, Rebecca, before I close, I want to thank you for the wonderful job that you did tonight and the joy and happiness that you brought to the process. And so,
well, thank you. And likewise, this was just a phenomenal evening with everybody that joined us here tonight. And so thank you, Charlie, for always taking your time out, your evening to spend such an important 90 minutes, which as we knew would just fly by. And to everybody that's been here with us tonight, sorry for the glitch as far as the scavenger hunt, but we did get some fun photos that we wanted to share real quick, Charlie, of some people. Yiming. with her kitty cat. So a selfie with her favorite pet. You mean with her family? So showing off.
There's the family.
Yeah, those are awesome. I love it. Christine with her puppy. Yes. Yeah. Oh, wow. Look at that. A university picture. Oh my gosh. You mean that's awesome. I love it. Okay. And I have serious FOMO over this mask, Christine. So you need to immediately send me a link to where you got this. That is awesome. I love it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. A couple more pictures from Rochelle. Oh, I love it. More masks.
Yes.
Oh, and Rochelle's little girl. She's so cute.
Hey, look at that. Hey, I know that guy.
Look at him. Look at Bob right now. Oh my gosh, that is awesome. What a great picture.
Look at that. That's a great picture. That's a great way to sort of pull it all together again and thank our founder and our very, very, very generous and great supporter and fearless leader and intellectual guide. Just a wonderful person to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So perfect way to round it all up again. Thank you to everybody for joining us. If you're watching the replay, you can learn more or all about these 5 barriers. All you have to do is go to bit.ly, that bit.ly/college barriers. And everything we talked about here tonight, all 5 of those barriers, you are helping us fight the good fight, as you say, Charlie, and helping us help all of these students overcome those barriers as we've outlined them tonight. So thanks again. We look forward to seeing you back here live. We're going to be here live a lot through the end of the year, which is awesome because I always love getting time face to face with you, Charlie, as always. So have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Take care, everybody.